Come alive when I'm in the face of danger. Bring the pressure, but I'm gonna rise above, yeah. Bet the house and I'll take that wager. They say you know a legend when you see one.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to the second episode of the Fighter One podcast. We are joined today by Joe Stevenson.
Hello.
How you doing?
Very good.
Having a great day?
Going amazing.
Golfer's clap.
I drove an hour and a half to get here, and it has been a great day since that. Like, didn't regret 1 minute of driving. There was no traffic, and on the way here, I was like, man, I'm gonna watch people get punched in the face.
Yeah, that's what we were talking about on the last episode. We were like, that's when we were talking about how crazy it is.
Yeah, that he drives all the way from Victorville all the way to Temecula.
That's really, really cool.
There was construction workers that were here watching them spar. Like, they're literally finishing up the remodel, and I watched him watch, and I was like, it's pretty cool, huh? And he goes, shakes his head, 100%. I thought that was was because he's literally doing
their
drywall.
Day better as they're working, too. They just stop and
That's
take
the
a look.
whole idea with this restaurant, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. We're going to be entertaining the people as they're eating their meal.
We're
On
animals.
the second day.
Yeah,
We're
the
animals.
masses.
100%.
So you got some exciting stuff going on with, now.
The wind blew the
Wind blew the
thing over the...
I was like, what the heck? Oh, okay. Well, that's fine.
Yeah.
Let me pump this up a little bit more then.
Yeah.
And then watch, it's going to move as soon as the wind blows again.
It's going to be so moody.
There you go.
Oh, well.
Yeah, you should be good.
We're just in a basement now.
Yeah.
Oh, I told Matt after COVID, he had come here, and I was like, was it Matt or RJ? I was like, oh yeah, they put it in the basement. He said, what? I go, yeah. They cleared out the closet under the stairs, and now it goes down. And he was all looking for the basement. It was great.
You trying to go under the stairs?
Oh,
Thinking
it was
there's
so
more
cool.
stairs? Yeah.
But yeah, you got some exciting things going on with. Maybe you want to talk about it a little bit, because I feel like probably a lot of people don't fully, like, they might think now. I mean, now you're going through the rebranding, but before you were known as the USFL.
Yeah,
now
so
you were the new president.
The USFL was made around like 2002. John Frank and some other people that really cared about mixed martial arts and how to develop it, because like to get it into the Olympics, you have to have youth development. So we're rebranding into USA MMA because it's a little easier to flow. And you get it when you hear the name. You're like, oh, okay, I see what that is. USFL could also sound like the football league, things like that. So USA MMA. Now, what is that? Our mission statement for our nonprofit is specifically to promote the sport of pancration, which is also known as MMA or mixed martial arts, and the development in the United States. We want to make the best kids possible. And when we say kids, because they develop into teenagers and then they develop into young adults. And we don't want to have it just as fighters. Like, if you were to look at the history of the kids that have come up, they've been great. They get into the UFC, they get into one championship, they get into these major Bellator, all these major organizations, and normally right away because they have so much prestige with them. But now that's all because of international competition, all because of when you say you're the best in the world, you fought literally people from Dagestan, Russia, Germany, China, the United States. So that's what we're doing, was we promote it. Now, promoting it allows us to go to world competitions. The IMAF world competitions are amazing. They have so many countries there. Every time.
Caribbean this time, right?
Well, no, the Pan American Games are going to be in South America. That's what we're getting ready for in March. I believe March 15th through 17th, we're going to be doing a team selection, and then the actual Pan Americans are going to be in July. This is going to be the first year that they've ever allowed kids and youth competitors to compete in the Pan Ams. So it's very exciting.
That's a pretty big deal, isn't it?
Well, yeah, we have a kid, Gio, here, who's amazing.
Oh, yeah.
He's going to be 18 in August, I believe, or July?
I believe August.
So July works out perfect for him. He can go do Pan Ams without head strikes, get the technical knowledge and skill set of the international competition, turn 18, and now they have this thing in IMAF called the junior division, which is 18 to 20. So when you're 19 years old, you don't have to fight like a 35-year-old steel worker that can just hold you there and hit you.
Sounds like a
That was like my debut.
Yeah.
Really?
I was an 18-year-old fighting a 30-year-old.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just
Did you win?
Oh, yeah, I won.
They got man straight.
Yeah. No, that's different.
That kind of reminds me of Umar when he fought Chris Espinoza.
Oh,
I
yeah,
thought kind of the same thing. I was like, it's
old.
kind of interesting because he was like
Age is just a
19
number
or something?
But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, the talent, they say fighting is a young man's sport. So
Yeah.
it being a young man's sport, well, what does that exactly entail? Well, why? Well, if you have a less of a chance of messing up earlier, like, so your first, until you're 23, 24, you're just picking and choosing the right fights at the right time, not fighting people that are 35, and you're able to build. Now everyone's like, man, that guy's 9-0 and just unstoppable. And he's won 9 fights. Like, how can he? Well, he's just kind of marketed himself right and he built up right.
Yeah.
I don't know if that guy is any tougher than the guy that's like 7 and 5. It just, maybe he's fought easier competition, maybe. But in this sport, it's looked at as like, well, that young and up and comer, he's undefeated. He could be John Jones.
Yeah. That was one of the things we were talking about last episode is I was saying how, because I was asking him how his parents felt about when he chose to go into fighting and stuff. And I always said, like, it's a little interesting because there's not like a clear path to success in fighting. Like I was comparing it to the NFL, how like you go to college and then you go to the pros. And it's like, if you're going to play in the pros, you go to college and you go to the pros. And I always feel like with fighting, it's like, there's so many different paths that people take.
Yeah.
So I was saying, like, there's like a Bo Nickel, you wrestle a bunch and then you have a couple fights and then you're in the contender series or.
Every pathway is different. But the one thing I do like about the sport now, it's kind of evolving, like the USFL. It's giving those guys a pathway to real competition. I think the days of guys training or maybe just wrestling all the way to high school and college and then getting into MMA is kind of becoming rare. Now it's kids who have been training MMA since they're 4 or 5 that are going to be coming in. So now you have kids who are just well-rounded in everything by the time, and they've already fought in 100 pancration fights, hundreds of jiu-jitsu tournaments before they're 18. So
Like that in Thailand with all the
You're
bad
seeing
that's-
high school kids beat college kids in wrestling.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And why? It's because there's a certain level that you can develop at a younger age if you fall in love with it. And
Yeah.
I've got 7 and 6-year-olds that are at my gym at 6 a.m. when it's 40 degrees outside and it's no more than 43 degrees inside. And I've got them wrestling for an hour and 15 minutes. Then I have those same kids doing MMA for an hour and a half. Then I have those same kids doing jiu-jitsu for another hour and a half.
Yeah.
Then they go home, do their homework. They come home. They come back to school or to the gym and do another 3 to 4 hours at night. So at that age, they're putting in 8 hours. If you just put in 5 hours, 200 days a year, 5 hours, 200 days a year, that's 1,000 hours. You could hit 10,000 hours in 10 years. These kids will have, and so if you started at 8, you could consider yourself very proficient by the time you were 18. And no one could argue that because you literally have documented time and grade.
Yeah.
I put in the time. I hit the bag. I did the jogging. I did the wrestling. I did the mat work on the wall. So, but you have those kids. Well, I got kids that are doing 8 hours. So they're even beating the 5 hours. The 5 hours is why I worked as a standard. Like when somebody tells me they work 5 hours a week, they're like, oh, I do 5 hours a week. I'm like, oh, well, I think my standard would be 5 hours a day if this is what you're going to choose to do. And then you talk about like, well, fighting is different for everyone because they all have these different things. Well, what happens, it's like a diet. It's lifestyle. So you have a lifestyle that you're accustomed to living. You live that lifestyle and you find out where fighting fits in. So, but the dangerous thing that he's talking about is the 4-year-old that has the parent that has been wise enough not to force their kid to train, but wise enough to teach his kid to love it. And now the kid wants to train all the time. And now that 4 or 5-year-old is training in the beginning, maybe 5 hours a week, having fun.
Yeah.
And then by the time they're 6 or 7, you know, people are like, what, how old are you? Because you've already put like 1,000 hours in. You know, people, oh, LeBron James is so good, or Tiger Woods so good. Their parents at a very young age instilled some of the best coaching, just like the Williams sisters, and helped develop them. And that's what we're about to see.
Yeah.
And that's the only way we can keep up with these other countries that actually have teams that are like paid to train amateur. Like
Russia and
yeah,
some other
all
countries.
these other countries, and we get to the World Championships. How can I tell a person who barely loses to a guy that's won world, like arguably beat the guy? It's hard to say he didn't. And then say, hey, you should try to beat him next year. When that guy's going to stay amateur because he gets paid to stay amateur, and you just kind of beat the guy who had won it like 3 or 4 times. Like, you could honestly at that point you're ready. You know you got what you needed out of it. Everyone's path is going to be different. Bo Nichols, wrestling at a high level. He's starting to feel confident with his hands and his stand-up, and that comes a lot from the wrestling. He just needs to make sure that he understands the effectiveness of his striking isn't the striking, but the fear of the grappling. And remembering that and respecting that will help him for the rest of his career easily. It's when you forget what got you there that you always get everyone in trouble.
You to the big show.
Yeah.
It's like you got to remember what got you there, and that's
you see a lot of people. That's kind of how I felt about that Colby Covington, Leon Edwards fight.
Oh yeah,
like he didn't really.
With Colby or Leon?
Colby, like he didn't really lean on the grappling at all.
Well, he didn't put his foot on the gas like normal. And I don't know if that's because
he could have been fighting
for 2 years, or he's been or he didn't take it as seriously.
So many reasons.
Yeah, and there's so many.
But he did not look like him.
There's so many factors that go into fighting. So you know, only Colby knows the real answer. He can say all these things. Oh, I broke my foot, and make all the excuses in the world. But he really knows why he didn't either show up or something happened. Only he knows that.
Yeah, it's those. It was been a crazy betting year.
Yeah,
like things that you would say, like that would have normally been a fair bet to say, like, well, the wrestler's going to take it. Like, he should take it. Like, stylistically, Leon, only wins from knockout. That wasn't the case. Like, if you bet Leon to win the decision,
I think they both made a lot of mistakes watching it, and it just shows you on any given night, even the world champion,
because you can respect somebody so much that it affects how you fight them. It's like fighting down to the level of your opponent sometimes. Like, that happens instead of, like, you fighting at your level.
Oh, for sure.
All of these things happen in the fight game.
For sure. I think in the Colby-Leon situation, I think that Colby obviously kind of talked a bunch of crap, said something about his father at the press conference. And Leon just, he put himself, he beat Colby, but he put himself in positions where Colby could get back in the fight. And that was the big thing for him. For me, I was like, why wrestle with Colby? Even if you are sometimes take him down, like Leon would take him down and then Colby would reverse him or get like scramble out of the position when it's like, just break away and strike. Remember what got you to the big show. Leon's striking has always gotten him to the big show. He's very technical. And so he should have played that game. I think he would have had more of a chance to finish the fight if he would have done that.
Yeah, which was kind of similar to that Sean Strickland fight too. Where like
Drakus.
He was almost just kind of like getting takedowns for the sake of takedowns.
Like we were talking about last time.
Yeah, it was like no advance. Yeah. Kind of similar thing with that one.
Yeah.
I definitely want to talk because it seems we're talking about like your careers a little bit. And I feel like you kind of had sort of like a similar trajectory with your pro career, right? You had quite a few fights before you ended up getting on the Ultimate Fighter.
So when I was growing up, I was in high school. I was fighting, like I started fighting professionally my sophomore year. So I fought a guy named Joe Camacho at a 12-step program's tennis courts in the very first King of the Cage. Gene LaBelle was my referee. Wow. I won. Then the next fight, I fought a guy named Steve Horton, who's like number 7 or 8 in the U.S. for like Greco-Roman wrestling, open. I beat him. So I'm 2-0, and then I run into Jens Pulver, who breaks my orbital. I don't think I was knocked unconscious, but I remember hitting the ground. But I remember being on the ground, so I feel like it was just immense pain.
This is before the UFC you fought Jens Pulver.
Yeah, well, John Peretti, the matchmaker for the UFC, was our referee, and he said, winner of this fight is in the UFC.
Okay.
And I'm legitimately just finished my sophomore year. This is my going into my junior year. This is the summer.
Isn't that crazy?
It's a month away from Columbine. It just happened. Columbine just happened. I was in Columbine.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I think I met like Nate. No, went to Colorado to go fight. So like that's because back in the day, there wasn't a lot of people that wanted to fight. So you had to find the fights. And then I lost to Jens. Then after that, my next fight was Chris Brennan. So Jens went on to go beat John Lewis and BJ Penn and become the UFC lightweight champion. And then my next fight was Chris Brennan, who had just fought Pat Miletich for the belt in the UFC. And I was supposed to beat him, I thought. Stylistically, it was a good matchup. But I got cocky. I was partying, doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing in high school. And I went to touch gloves. He swung at me from the glove touch. He didn't even touch. I ducked it, and I shot a double. He jumped in our guillotine. I remember, like, getting a little tired and being like, oh, I can't lose like this. Yeah. So I ran him into the crossbar.
Oh, yeah.
Shoved him off, and I fought emotionally. I was on top of him punching him, and I was so emotional, I allowed him to sit up and reverse me. He caught me in a triangle choke. I tapped, and then he held on, and the referee had to pull it off, but I went unconscious. I remember that was my, that I just had my orbital broke before that. So it's like my second bad experience. And I went on to beat people like Toby Amata in high school, and he was amazing. Like all these other guys I would fight. And but I had been offered, there. I got offered a fight against, I want to say, Serra, when I was like 19 in the UFC, and I told him, yeah.
Before he fought GSP?
Yeah. So, but my coach at the time was my manager, and he was also promoting. So it was like, and I was in a old boxing contract. So it was like 33.3%. And so at that point, it was, when they said no, it was very difficult. They said no, so I was like, all right, I can't fight. So what ended up happening is some bad things happened in my life where somebody that I really trusted broke the relationship of me and my wife, my first wife. And so we separated, and I was raising 2 kids. The place I was at was kind of involved in that, so I had to leave. I was a brown belt. I had already beaten the black belt world champion in a grappling match. But now I had to go move. So I made a decision. I said, I'm either going to move to the top team in Florida, Greg Jackson's in New Mexico, or train with Mark Lehman. And if I train with Mark Lehman, I'm only working on my black belt. So I quit fighting, and I moved to Vegas, and I started training with Mark to work on my black belt. In the midst of that, Joe Silva came in and was like, oh, you have to fight, because I was sparring with everyone and helping him because I was young. So I was able to do it and coach effectively. And then I went on The Ultimate Fighter and kind of made history from there.
Wow.
But I had quit fighting for 2 years because of the politics. Like, there's always politics between matchmakers and promoters and, who they want, because they already have their hand in the pot. Like their managers or their friends or this and that and the other. And
it's the stuff that people don't see, man.
I quit. I had quit for 2 years. And and then when I did The Ultimate Fighter and I got thrown into fame, I was like, oh, great. And that it can,
about time.
I was like, okay. But it wasn't but then, you still see it. And it still comes up. But when you're on the top, it's not as bad, because it's not really affecting you like it's affecting everyone else. And And that's something that, I wish I would have thought of. And I wish I would have I had a very pure heart and always very kind, take my shirt off and sign it for you, give it to you. But I wish I would have thought a little bit more too and say, hey, cool. Because I've been coaching fighters since like I was 16. My first fight I coached in the UFC, I was 18, Philip Miller in England. Like, I had been coaching fighting before that, like, and coaching fighters. I have like a first crop of guys that I feel like were amazing. Philip Miller, Jason Lambert, me, we were all like training, but I was coaching with my coach at the time, but he was fighting, so he wasn't coaching as much. So everyone was kind of like fending for yourself, which ends up happening a lot of times in the fight game because fighting is a very selfish sport. But that was just about winning and being the baddest. And we were. Like, Philip Miller retired out of MMA undefeated, fought in the UFC, won 2 or 3 fights, on his own terms, went out. I think Jason Lambert did great, fought some great competition, like amazing wins over great fighters.
When you moved to Vegas,
I left
did you
that
kind
match.
of because you said you were doing like some partying and doing some things that you weren't supposed to before that. Did you kind of clean up some of that stuff before you went to Vegas?
No. I went to Vegas and it made it worse.
That was my question.
When you find out somebody you love, like has hurt you, and 2 people that you love have hurt you, you go in a dark place. Like, you're drinking and you can handle it. Like, when I had bad experiences, drinking, like, I was a very functional alcoholic. Like, it's been 11 years now, but I could fully function and run the best class you ever had drunk. I would beat people in submission matches, and I would burp beer or alcohol, and they would smell it, and they would cuss. To this day, I love Sean Spangler, and he used to get mad when I was drunk. Like, but I wasted so much of my opportunity and stuff partying like that. We were in Hawaii, and Kendall Grove was talking in front of my girlfriend, Jess, and he was like, yeah, man, if you wouldn't have partied, Joe, you'd still be like champ in the UFC.
Yeah.
And she was like, that hurt her because she had never heard that. She knows how good I am, but she never heard that. And I had to explain to her, yeah, I made some poor choices. Well, when I went to Vegas, I wasn't trying to make poor choices, but everyone visits Vegas and wants you to take them out, and then you go drinking, and then like I could go out and then read about it in the newspaper the next day. Like, legitimately.
It's an easy place to make bad decisions. I think we can all agree on that. Yeah.
But and then I left right like 2008 or 9 and went back to California to start my gym. But even at that point, then I had started training at Jackson's. So most like 6 months I'm in New Mexico because 2 months before every fight, I'm training in a fight camp. So I'm not home very much. It opened up a lot of opportunities for bad things to happen, and they did. And I mean, I guess all of that struggle and stuff was good though, because it allowed me to teach the people that are like Jeff, or to share it with kids. That first batch, I was just trying to get killers. The second batch of guys, I think I've done really well with. I consider you like my third batch. Just so you know, Jeff, like, I figure like Dominic, Juan, Jamal, Robert was part of that second batch because they all grew up together. But that explains a lot now. He's 9-0. Yeah. He did it slow and right.
And he listened.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he listened.
Yeah.
And so, or he's 9-1, but 9 wins in a row. Not very many people get to say that,
No,
you know?
for sure.
Juan had 17. When like Dom had 9 or 10. Like,
what was like the turnaround for you with like all of your drinking and stuff like that? Did you kind of have to hit rock bottom first, or did you wake up?
I was scared I was going to lose my kids. So what got to me was my wife at the time, Maya, had said, like, I'm going to, that's it. Like, I wasn't doing anything crazy at the house, but I would drink and I wouldn't want to come home, and that wasn't appropriate. And I recognized it, and I stopped drinking. And it was hard because 30 days after I stopped drinking, she tried to take me out to celebrate. and drink. And I was like, that's not how it works. That's not how these meetings are going. I'm sorry.
Yep.
And that was probably something that was, I vomited for 4 days straight after I quit drinking. I have, to this day, 11 years later, sometimes nightmares. Sometimes still like a little twitch, which is like supposedly a mini seizure. Like these are all very serious repercussions from alcohol. They say it's harder to kick than like opiate.
It can kill you.
Oh yeah.
That's why I was curious.
I went through everything you could imagine, and I wanted to be there for my kids so bad that it was easy. It was not as hard because it was just simple. I've never been late to pick up my kids from school. I've never missed a call time. I've never missed something I was supposed to do for them, ever. Like I'm very proud. One time I called 15 minutes late. I can remember. Like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be my MO. So when I recognized I wasn't doing my best, quitting drinking was easy. In the month that I quit drinking, I'm working with like Kingdom, like Greg Jackson calls me. I'm thinking about taking a fight in New Zealand. And then I'm like, I get offered this show to teach these actors. I do such a good job teaching them. They asked me to continue and to do choreograph and to be on the show. And it was a great experience because at the time I got to go through some emotions like sober that I had already went through, but I used drinking and everything to kind of mask.
Right. So now you were feeling your raw emotions. And
Oh
having
my
to do
gosh. I remember one time Matt Lauria and maybe Nick Jonas were like, are you okay? Because I had a fake beer bottle in my hand and I was sweating. I'm sweating profusely in the scene because I had just quit that life.
Right.
And that was very difficult. And that helped me so much. Like, imagine your first Hollywood rap party from season 1 that you know yourself and you're just like, no, I gotta go, guys. Thanks. It was great.
Yeah.
I know it's an open bar, but that's not for me. And leaving after an hour and a half, it's like, I learned a lot though. I had to research. I had to explain it better. I became more professional because of Kingdom, and it helped me deal with my own emotions, and I got to actually feel in the moment like, oh man, I've been here, done that. Like, I get it.
Yeah. As much as it was a struggle, like you said, it was easier because your kids, you don't even know what love is until you have kids. My dad he says that. My dad's like a non-emotional guy. He's like, you don't even know what love is until you have kids. And you can do a lot, when you're doing it for your kids. So,
I feel like fatherly love is like one of the most overlooked types of love too.
Yeah.
Because half of what it is unseen by the kids,
Right. Yeah.
Like, I think
they don't understand it. Yeah.
I've been through emotional times with the kids, and like they've seen me cry, and
well, I don't mean so much that. I mean like all the work that you do and stuff that goes unseen.
well, that's why. Like for the longest time, they never saw me cry. And one time, it was a very, very traumatic event, and things were happening and things were in motion. And I remember tears just started running down my face, and my son looked at me because he was like, I feel like sometimes kids can be pushed in a different direction, and he was being pushed in a different direction at the time. And it took me being vulnerable for him to see those emotions that I'm doing every day on my face before it registered like, wait a minute, am I doing the right thing? Because it's affecting more people than just me. And that's that fatherly love that you don't talk about because you have to do it. Like if you waste time talking about it, afterwards we're bragging about it. That's great.
Right.
I love bragging about my kids and bragging about what I can do for my kids. But if you can talk about it, you can do it. And if you can do it, you should do it. And so just do it. So like in the moment, most of the time you're just trying to hustle like, man, we got CIF in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
How's their weight? how they're going to be prepared. What are they eating? What time am I waking them up? Tomorrow they're going to go see Dr. Chiriano, and I'm going to have them work on their lungs and their knee on Wednesday. I've already paid for them to go get cryo, things like that. Like all for it to build up in 2 weeks for a chance for their sectional tournament to go to the next sectional and then to state championships. And I've already watched them beat kids that are amazing. I've watched them lose to kids that are amazing, but I've always watched them have a great attitude. And I've learned now, I'm very energetic there and scream, but I'm enjoying the process with them and that love. And
yeah, and you and your kids are you're like a dime out of a dozen, because your kids see what you go through in a day and how hard you work. And plus they're always training and traveling with you and coming here, training in Victorville. So they see like all the work that you put in versus like some family, like normal families, dad goes and works, kids are at home. They don't know what dad goes through during a regular day. So I think you and your kids are just that much more closer because they're that much more of your part of your life.
I really love the fact that when COVID happened, I could bring them down here. They were training. I think they really leveled up. Like, they got to train like a couple hours a day. They got to do their schoolwork and be effective and still get good grades. Like, I didn't mind it. I saw it was difficult for a lot of people because some people didn't have that ability to go to a good home environment or something that was going to be suitable for them. And that kind of makes it unfair for everyone else.
Well, yeah, and most things were closed during that time.
Yeah,
so.
I feel like I have a lot different perspective on that now, though, that my dad passed away. I feel like I like watch like dads with their like their kids and stuff, and I feel like I have like a different perspective on it now. Because from a young age I was very like aware of like the issues that we had like as a family. Because my dad, he worked telecommunications for the government, but he was a contractor.
Okay.
So whenever like, you probably remember during like the Bush administration and Obama, there was a lot of government shutdowns.
Yeah.
And whenever a government shutdown would happen, he'd be the first to be laid off.
Gotcha.
And then until they got the government back up, he basically wouldn't have a job. So there was a couple times there where like we lost where we were living and we were like sleeping in our car, like on the beach.
Yeah.
And I just remember one night, like just like sitting in like the seat back there, like in the middle of the night, and I like woke up and he's just like staring like blank out the windshield, and just like that feeling of like failure,
and desperation.
And like
too.
it's like grips you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's nice to see like people succeed and yeah, you guys are doing real good.
Yeah.
It makes me
My
feel
friend-
good to see you guys.
Yeah.
My friend Ryan was telling me one time, he just had his birthday, but he passed away. He was telling me, well, if you come from an abusive home and getting hit, it's like an 85% chance that you're going to do the same stuff. And I was like, well, that's not true because I came from an abusive home. He goes, well, there's a 15% chance that you are the other percent, and the other percent gets in abusive relationships where people manipulate them and control them. And I was like, kind of quiet. And I was like, it's because when we were kids, like I grew up in a tent and my dad was he was building an RV. We were going to drive around. He was bipolar and schizophrenic, but he was a genius and he was a machinist. And for 7 months in Porterville, we lived on a campground in a tent as he built from the ground up an RV, and it was beautiful. Wooden frame, everything was perfect. We were actually sleeping in it one night, and he woke up, my mom, me, and my sisters, and he had an axe above the bed. So then we took off, and then he sold it for like $5,000, and it's like, but I didn't remember any of that until I talked to my mom. I just remembered my dog lady saving my sister's life, or me being on a harness and going downhill and getting caught in the harness on my 3-wheel. I remember because I had a lot of love in my heart. So we had a good time. Like I didn't look at it that was like it was bad because I had family, because we had each other. And, I wish I would have seen that look in my dad that you got to see. I didn't get to, he had left. Then when he got bone marrow and cancer, he had it since I was like 8 or 9. And so he passed away when I was 17. But like every year they're telling me my dad's gonna die. And then when it finally happens, it's like, and I had seen him. I should have known that it was getting sooner and sooner because I hadn't seen him since I was like 8 or 9. And at 16, he came to visit me. And he had won some money in the casino, because I had already fought Jens Pulver and Chris Brennan. And he's like, oh, you think you're a badass? And no, I let my dad hit me a little bit and I held him and I loved him and it was awesome. And then they flew me out to visit him when he was on a hospice, but I didn't know what hospice was. He offered me morphine. I was like, no, Dad, I'll just stick to a beer. And I drank a beer with him and then he had passed shortly after that. Like my dad and my grandpa who raised me, who were like my male role models. My grandpa was a POW in World War II. And when my mom had ended up going away for a little bit, my grandpa took care of me and my sisters for like 3 years. And he passed away the same month as my dad. My son did the like ancestry of me and he just contacted me and was like, Dad, did that happen? I was like, yeah. It's like, it was a bad month. I also didn't win at state, lost in overtime twice. So it was, but you don't think about those things until you have to bring yourself to think about them. And then you analyze them and you're like, oh, wait a minute. And I think that's why I strive, because I was the kid that was at the elementary school in the office waiting for their parents, because you're at the gate and then they don't come and then you're in the office and you're sitting in that chair. So I never wanted that to be to my kids. And my mom worked 2 jobs. Like my dad, when he was there, he was doing amazing things. So it was just like busy. 2-income family now. Like now it's even crazier. Like, and it's what was caused like desperation. That's why it's important to love what you do. That's why I can drive here an hour and a half and then drive home an hour and a half without traffic. If there's traffic, it's longer.
Right.
And I can do that 2 days a week for sure. And most of the time it's 3 days, at least, like with a belt promotion or a fight. So like I can do that and I can drive down here with my radio completely off, not listening to anything, just like happy, like content.
Yeah.
Understanding like I can make choices. Sometimes I'm driving and my girl's like, hey, can you turn on the radio? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I'm at peace now with the long drives and with myself and with like the direction I'm trying to succeed in my life. Yeah, quitting drinking was probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because success just started to like roll downhill, like the momentum it caught like a snowball effect, and it has continued.
Right.
And now I've learned the second generation of fighters, by the way, to get back to that subject we started 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, we've really went kind of like all over the place, but I do want to ask one more question to both of you guys. Actually, you guys are both kind of explaining your traumatic kind of experience in childhood. Take a moment to reflect, and can you guys tell me something positive in both of your guys' situation that came from it? Now looking back.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, you first, then Brandon.
I know what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
Period. Because everyone's different, every circumstance is different. So knowing what to do is often difficult because circumstances may vary.
Right.
But knowing what not to do tends to say the same. And I can tell you what not to do. And if you just don't do the don'ts, don't post your hands on the mat, don't put your weight on your heels, don't let your lead shoulder exceed your lead knee. If you don't break any of those principles, you tend to do really good in wrestling, and the same thing in life. If you don't make those mistakes early off,
Right.
because you're able to avoid them because of wisdom, you're set much better for success as you get older.
Yeah.
You got to work hard. You got to do what you do now,
Right.
so that when you're my age, it's easier.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, you'll be told with as much experience as I have and Dan has and everyone has, like what not to do. I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And that's the best stuff to listen to, because that's from personal experience.
Yeah.
And everyone is different, and you can analyze it, and maybe it'll work for you, but at least you know now, like, that way doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is like overcoming like shame.
Mm-hmm.
Like shame, I think. So I feel like when I was younger, like my dad was like a pretty introverted guy. Like he
Okay.
wasn't very like overly talkative. Like I didn't really get like a lot of guidance from him, especially
Okay.
since like he was always working a lot of jobs. So like I didn't really see him like at all.
Right.
So I feel like I understand like the perspective of needing a father now, because like when you don't have a father figure in your life, you kind of like try on a bunch of different clothes. So like whatever kind of environment that
I
you
see.
find yourself in, you try those.
Yeah.
So I kind of went from extreme to extreme. So like when I was younger, I got in with like the wrong crowd, and I was a very like agreeable person. I wanted people to like me and stuff. So then I started doing same stuff that you were talking about. And then just kind of hit rock bottom, like the same way that you were talking about, just needed to make a change. And then I went from that to like being completely isolated and like not talking to anybody.
Mhm.
And that's like a complete polar shift where like I was living for people so much before that I didn't even know who I was or what I enjoyed or what I liked to do. Or because if I trace back anything that I was doing before, it was directly connected to somebody else that was doing that thing in a group that I was in before.
Well, you lacked purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
You like you said, you wanted the people to like you, right? Yeah. Or you lived for other people.
It feels good when people give you attention.
It does. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
but the thing is, like, you don't need that. That's not what really, like, that does it. Those same people don't give you the right attention all the time.
Right.
And those same people turn on you. Like,
Yeah.
it's easy. They tell you, like, you know, like, you have to find happiness with yourself. And then, so now you got to figure out what makes you happy. And then when you figure out what makes you happy, then you figure out a way to get paid to do it. You never work a day in your life.
Yeah. And I think
Right.
the whole shame of all that was like the thing I had to overcome the most. Because especially like with the stuff with my dad, like we both did like some stuff to each other, like when I was younger, to where we didn't really know how to like bridge that gap. So
Mm.
then like he died so suddenly in like a way where basically like he worked his whole life to like try to own a home. And then they were able to buy the house, and then he got a divorce with my mom. So
Mm.
then he's living in like a little place by himself, and then he ended up passing away in there by himself. So I feel like a lot of I have like a lot of guilt because I didn't know how to reach
didn't
out
bridge
to
that
him.
gap, too.
Yeah, we just didn't bridge that gap. And you
Yeah.
always think that you have like way more time than you actually do.
Yeah.
That's why, in a way, it kind of might have been a little bit of a
True.
blessing that your dad was on hospice, because at least you got to have. I mean, I don't know how great that one last moment was for you. I don't know if you think it would have been better if it didn't happen, but
No, you know, time is time, and everything. You have to be thankful for everything. So, like,
Yeah.
no matter what, like, I would never take that moment back, and I wouldn't change it because it's made me, you know, the person I am today. So, like, I could never take that moment back. And that the dealing with, I'm not a very, you gotta tell me you want me to do something. You can't like put hints.
Yeah. No, you
'Cause
just
things
gotta be
go
very
over my-
direct
Yeah,
with Joe. Yeah.
'cause I I'm very in the moment, and I give it everything I got. And when I do that, that means my perception of other things is not there. Like,
Right.
because I'm focused on my task at hand and getting it. Because you have to see which way the hand is rotating in the position, and to understand what is happening next and what you need to be worried about. And you can't be thinking of other things during that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I will say, bring it back to like what you guys were talking about like way later. It does kind of give me like a sense of relief knowing that my dad was like a believer, and like I will see him again, you know?
well, that's another thing about life is legitimately a test. And you sit there and you're like, if eternity is granted, which it is, like heaven and hell, so now you have to choose. And we sit here and we look at life, and it is very difficult to choose, because like I've often like prayed like, oh man, why do we even get to choose? I just want to serve you. Please don't, I don't want choice. I don't want that problem. But God knows best. And he knows that we have to ultimately want it because of everything that's already happened. And life is a lot better once you figure out that like God's will is going to happen. So like the bad isn't the bad. It's just taking place so that good can eventually come of it. It's like,
Right.
and we're always like, oh, it's unfair because we're selfish. Like, oh, it's unfair to us and that. Well,
Yeah.
it's not.
We're
It's part
designed to
of-
take things for granted too. And I think that's, like you said, you have to, like, it's how you perceive the bad. You know, and that's why I asked you guys both that question. It's because, you know, you can probably remember how you felt during kind of those moments, right, as you were growing up. But to now stand back and reflect and at least find something good that came from it and that now has stayed with you today.
This is the first time I've talked about that, actually.
Yeah, it was a real serious conversation, but it's good to take a moment, I feel like, when you go through something bad, whatever it is, and just reflect on how it changed you for the better and what did you get out of it. And at least that will stay with you for the rest of your life. And you could, and like I said, the perception of things is everything, you know.
Parents have to remember. Like you asked if I could remember one. I honestly can't. Just so you know. And a little bit of it is because at the age like 6 or 7 or 8, my dad was out of the picture. But the things I did remember, even the happy things I now remember, like my dad taught me to swim by throwing me into Lake Michigan, like in a life jacket outside of a boat.
Right.
Like, oh, he taught me to swim. I thought I was gonna die. I believe my mom said that he baptized me in a trash can. I stepped in my cake. They made me eat it because we were poor. I remember going to the pool hall with my dad, but that was at a bar. I shouldn't have been there at the bar
Right.
with cigarette smoke. I remember the axe part. I remember, but I do remember, now that I think of it, now I'm glad I'm talking about it, I do remember him building the RV was good. The ultimate end of it was bad. So that part leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But the experience, which is like, I guess, the journey. It's kind of like when you're done fighting, it's like you look back and you're like, look at all these friends I've made, these relationships, everything I've done. You're like, wow.
Yeah. And I wasn't necessarily meaning like one moment back then while you were going through it was good. But like, I mean, like now, just look how good of a father you are.
Because of it.
Because of it, right? So you know how to parent. You know how to be close with your kids. Like it takes just to reflect and see, oh wow, even though you probably don't wish that you would have went through that, but you did, and how did it change you?
I had to go through it to help kids now.
Right. Yeah. And look how good of a coach you are and how many kids that you coach.
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I wanted to ask you about that.
That's so
question.
chere to me too, like how well you know like all their names and like all that.
Dude, yeah. Because they say like people mostly have like a where they can only remember some acquaintances. It's like in levels.
Yeah.
Like you can only really remember like 200 people, I think is the number, something around there, 150, 200. But you have that many students, you know, and plus more.
I remember
plus your
faces very well, but names, that it's really
No, that's the same. I'm the same way. And faces, if you show me a face, all right, I know that face. Names, I got to ask like 3 times.
Coach
You know?
Lovato Sr. is
Yeah.
the one that told me 3 times. You got to hear it 3 times.
3 times, yeah.
So that's why you're always shaking their hand, making eye contact, because
right.
you're trying to remember that first name. And then
Right, yeah.
second time you try to do it, you try to at least do it 3 times. And so for me, I always, for sure it's 3 times, but for me it's 3 times 3.
Yeah.
So that first day, I'm going to make sure I say it 3 times. And then I'll tell you, I'll probably forget it the next time.
Yeah.
And then I'll do it the next time, and I'll maybe get it right one of the times. But
Right.
And then the 3rd time, I've got it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, then I get to finish my statement.
finish your statement.
The reason I have the 3rd crop of fighters and what I've changed is character development and integrity and moral compass. Like, because
Very important.
you can teach anyone the good stuff and they're going to be good with it. But now I've learned that if you want them to have longevity and you want them to have success everywhere, it has to be through character development, morals, all of that, integrity first, and pushed with a competitive attitude to want to be successful.
On top of that, I think, like, I'm one of your students, so I think I can say it. I want to represent you well. So it's not just me going out there with my last name. You know, if I go out there, say scenario, I fight, I lose, I act like a complete idiot afterwards and shove the guy and just am an asshole. That doesn't just rub bad off on me. That rubs bad off on him too, because he's my head coach. And so I just think it. Yeah, in today's day and age too, morals are becoming more rare. It just is, and people of principle are becoming more rare. So it is really important for that character development, I think, and especially with the young kids.
Well, in mixed martial arts,
Yeah.
so if you came from a karate background, if you came from a traditional martial art background and you came into the sport of mixed martial arts, you would have that discipline and tradition. A lot of the guys are coming from a wrestling, which a wrestling room brings like a certain type of sharpness, alpha male, like you are going to have character. There's going to be, you're tough as
You're gonna
heck.
be grit. Yeah.
But necessarily, you're not going to have the martial arts aspect,
Right.
or the bowing on the mat, or the respectfulness, or tradition, because you're like, well, no, what are we going to do now? Same in the boxing or kickboxing. Some in Muay Thai, you see them bowing before the match, and that's great because those guys are respectful, and there's a lot of honor in that.
Right.
But when you put yourself as a prize fighter, and you say, well, I got to talk. Look at Robert and the guy he's supposed to fight.
Liam, Liam Giddens. Yeah.
Liam and him, they're talking about each other's mothers. And honestly, I'm happy that they're doing it like this, because like it is personal,
Right.
but I don't think it's as personal as
They seem it out to be.
Yeah.
I think
it's personal because it's their mom.
Right.
You're going to talk
Right.
about my mom that way, and it's going to be funny, hilarious banter.
Yep.
And I think it is the politest way, whereas you've seen other people talk and be negative and say like, oh, I'm going to make you hold my pocket or stuff like that.
Right.
Well, shoot, these things are difficult when you say them. You represent me, but you're teaching this to other kids
Right.
that are growing up, and they're thinking that's what they got to do, and that's what all the big corporations want you to do.
Of course.
They want you to sell out.
They want you to sell a fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you shouldn't sacrifice your integrity to sell a fight.
Right.
At that point, if you're not getting, you're a prostitute. Like, you are putting yourself out there for somebody else's entertainment that you're not going to get a royalty from.
Right.
It's a one and done company. And
I think with to go from Robert's kind of perspective, because I'm a fighter up and coming. I think it's kind of genius that what Robert's doing. Because
the way they're doing it too.
Because his rise is being watched, and I'm glad that he's fighting for Cage Warriors, and it's going to be across the pond in England, because he's going to be in a different fan base. He's going to be the bad guy. He's the heel. He knows that. So I think his banter and trash talk, it gets people involved emotionally into the fight, and it's gonna make him stand out even more, especially if he wins the fight. And so, in this game, it's about, and me and you have talked about this. It's not about just winning. It's about how you win. It's about how people perceive you. And yeah, you don't want to live for other people's opinion, but it is an entertainment sport. And so I think that's what Roberts does really well. And I agree. You shouldn't, the jabs at the mom and stuff, I'm not a huge fan of that. That's not how I roll, but I do like when it is a real beef and there is real tension, I can see why people say certain things. I think with them, like you said, it's not as serious as they're making it out to be.
But it is,
it's
though. It's like when two sisters or cousins are talking, and they're like, and then it gets a little personal. Then someone's hair gets pulled, and somebody gets punched in the face.
Right.
That's what's happening.
We'll see how serious they take it when he flies across, and they're at weigh-ins or at a press conference, and then you'll see. But I think it's just part of the sport. And is it the right thing to do? Probably not all the time, and I think it shows kind of the bad side of people sometimes. The nasty side of
You
people.
have a choice how you allow it to be perceived.
Right, yeah, and
I think that's probably why a lot of people love Dan so much, is because what you saw is what you got.
that's true.
He was
very true.
I think he trash talked like
His
one
trash
person.
talk was just so basic, but it made everybody laugh, and he was like, and it wasn't over the line.
That's that wrestling mentality.
100%. Yeah.
100% wrestling mentality.
Yeah. It's just crazy how people market themselves different, and everybody's trying to be the next Conor McGregor. But the problem is that blueprint is already that was him. That was him then. You can't be that. So just be organic. That's ultimately, what should happen.
Well, fellas, I think we'll probably cut this off now so you guys have enough time to take a break or something before you
Awesome.
guys
Hey,
gotta teach classes.
right there, coach.
I appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Thanks for talking about everything,
man.
and
Yeah.
but I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Heck yeah. Till next
and,
one.
Yeah,
talking to
we're
you.
Monday. Next Pat channel.
Yeah.
That
Yep.
time.
Sweet.
Sounds good.